Hi there, good evening. Welcome to State of Affairs here on GHOne Television. I am Francis Abban. It's another Monday evening. Of course, when the matters are important, vexed, and ready for discussion, you are sure and certain that here on State of Affairs, we will have that full conversation for you. Welcome once again. The show is live on GHOne Television, and you can follow us on our live stream on Facebook and on YouTube and share your views with us. The show is brought to you in association with MTN. MTN is everywhere you go. And MTN says to remind you that they have a wonderful app. It's called the MTN Momo app. You can't miss it. It's got the yellow and blue icon. Once you download it, you get the chance to send or receive money, also pay your bills, view your statements, all the transactions you want to make with your regular MTN Momo. You can do that with the app. It makes life a lot more easy on MTN. MTN is everywhere you go. Tonight, our conversation has got everything to do with how well the Ghanaian economy is doing under the IMF program. You may well be aware that we are now into the second half of the year. The first half has had its own issues with the depreciation of the currency and all the attendant problems that have come with it. But tonight, we have clear indications that, I don't know if it's in already or by midnight, some $360 million has been released as a third tranche of the IMF bailout for us as a country. Ghana is sitting in the Bank of Ghana's accounts, we're told tonight. What does it mean for all of us? Should we have a jamboree, have a party, or we should hasten slowly and look at things from a broader perspective? Before I introduce my guest to you tonight to situate and bring us further light and knowledge on the matter, let's bring you a report capturing what was said at the press earlier today when the Finance Minister addressed the country.
Speaking at a joint press conference following an executive approval of the $360 million third tranche under the IMF program, Ghana Mission Chief Stefan disclosed Ghana's strong performance of indicators compelled the fund to adjust the expected growth target upwards.
All of these efforts are yielding positive results. Signs of economic stabilization are emerging. For example, economic growth has proven more resilient than initially envisaged. Therefore, we are revising our growth projection up from 2.8 to 3.1% for 2024. Inflation is declining rapidly, from 54% in December 2022 to 23% in May 2024. And Ghana's international reserves have been increasing.
Finance Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin, on his part, described the recent economic indicators as one that vindicates earlier assertions by the President that the government will bring the economy back to life.
Many countries, as of today, have not recovered. Some advanced countries are still in recession. And if you recall, our President said at the time that we know how to bring the economy back, but we do not know how to bring lives back. If you look at the economy of Ghana at the time and today, you compare it with what is happening today, our President has been vindicated because the economy has come around, the economy has come back.
The Finance Minister also took a swipe at Ranking Member of Parliament's Finance Committee, Isaac Adongo, accusing him of inciting speculation. The MP for Gatanga Central last week had urged business owners to buy dollars if they needed.
Please, if you have to run your business and you need dollars, just go ahead and buy them. Don't be listening to Mohamed Amin, who said that you should watch the dollar the next day. We watched the dollar several months ago when you got 1.2 billion and it is rising. Do you get it? Don't lose out when you need money to run your business. Of course, I discourage people from speculatively buying the dollar when they don't need it. But if you need it for your business, by all means, go ahead and do it. Don't listen to him.
But in a direct response, Dr. Amin says the actions of Mr. Adongo are not healthy for the economy.
We have had intelligence that people have been deliberately inciting speculation, but we never got it too real as we saw only 2 or 3 days ago when my good friend and my brother, the Honorable Adongo, went out there urging people to buy dollars to do their business. My brother went out there to say that people should ignore Amin Adam and go out there and buy dollars to do their business. I think that this is not healthy for our economy. We all need to work together, whether we are with the government or we are with the minority, because we are all stakeholders in this economy.
The minister assures the IMF will credit the accounts of the Bank of Ghana with the $360 million by close of day, July 1, 2024.
Right, so that's what happened at the presser today by the finance minister. Also today, the governor of the central bank, Dr. Ernest Addison, gave a clear indication of steps towards recapitalizing the central bank. Let's hear what was said.
The improving economic fundamentals, the strong accumulation of foreign exchange reserves under the Gold for Reserve program, and the agreement with the OCC and sovereign bond holders on debt restructuring should all in concert provide the basis for stability in the exchange rate going forward. With a successful conclusion of the second review, we need to begin to think of the third review of the program and beyond, and take advantage of the reform momentum. Steadfastness and commitment will be needed from now to the end of the year to see through all the structural reforms envisaged under the program, including the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Ghana on the recapitalization of the central bank. This will strengthen the central bank's credibility to effectively deliver on its reforms.
All right. Now, the last thing I have to share with you before we begin our conversations has got to do with those whose funds are locked up with some of the financial institutions in the country. The finance minister and the governor of the central bank had a few words to share on what's been done to address it.
There was provision of about 4 billion Ghana cedis to address the legacy challenges in the financial sector. And part of this is what we are channeling into NIB to recapitalize NIB. And part is what we are using to provide a bailout. I like to qualify that to the customers of the liquidated financial institutions. The amount standing in their name, their losses, I understand it's about 4 billion Ghana cedis. But this is bailout the government is providing. It is important we understand that government does not accept liability for the investment decisions of individuals and corporate entities. Government doesn't accept liability for that. And this is why we call it bailout. Government had earlier provided bailout, I think 50,000 per affected person. And what we are seeking to do is a second bailout, because our government is sensitive to the plight of the affected people. As a government, you don't see that because your citizens made mistakes or they were not well informed and therefore they took investment decisions which have landed them into losses. You want to watch them suffer.
Before I go on that one, let me bring a little clarity to this issue on the legacy problems in the financial sector. I believe what the minister was speaking about the SEC regulated institutions that have been sort of waiting for this bailout. But in addition to the SEC regulated institutions, you also have the SDIs. These are savings and loans, microfinance institutions, finance houses, which are also in trouble. The long and short of it is that the resources are not yet available. And as soon as the resources are made available, we would have to deal with depositors in that segment of the financial sector.
So we've heard tonight from the finance minister and also from the governor of the central bank. A lot of things to go through tonight. And who better to join us to fully break this down than our very good friend. He is the technical advisor at the Office of the Finance Minister, Dr. Abudu Abdul-Ganiyu. Doc, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I trust you're well and keeping safe.
Sure.
Long day, no?
Absolutely.
Such
a long day.
I can imagine.
Yep.
We're also joined via Zoom by Dr. Richmond Itiani. He's a senior banking consultant, quite a regular here on the show. Doc, thank you for joining us. Doc, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Francis.
I trust you're well.
Good evening. Yeah, by His grace, I'm doing very, very well.
Fantastic. All right. Dr. Ganiyu, I guess I can start with you tonight.
Just a second.
The indications have been clear to us that $360 million bailout tranche, third tranche in.
Yep.
Has the money hit the accounts as of tonight?
Well, the money was expected to hit our accounts. We can confirm that early tomorrow morning, but I trust that indeed that has happened.
So the money is being sent from where into the Bank of Ghana's account?
No, it's basically from the IMF, and that goes to the Bank of Ghana on behalf of the government and people of Ghana. So once executive board approval has been given, the expectation certainly is that the money should be hitting our accounts today.
What does this $360 million hitting our accounts mean directly for that viewer who's watching us tonight, who's thinking about the Ghanaian economy?
Okay, so we signed up for the extended credit facility under the IMF in May 2023, and quite a lot of criteria were set for us to follow. Now, we've had a successful second review, meaning there was a first review after we got the first tranche of 600 million. And upon a second review, we got the another 600 million that came. And the very last review that was done was in April this year, meaning that has resulted in the third tranche of $360 million. Now, what that means is that if we hadn't met the criteria that has been set under the program, then these tranches would not have come. That is simply what it means. So if they have continued to come, it is an indication that we are making progress under the IMF program.
But this should have come in April, isn't it?
No. April was the review.
Yes.
And the review was done, but per the schedule of the IMF, it would have been placed before the executive board in June.
Now,
and that was exactly what happened.
Well, the delay to the executive board was because of the
there was never
negotiations that we had to do with the official creditors.
There was never a delay to the executive board. The executive board schedule was always to sit in June. But by April, around the 30th of April, we had secured what we call a staff level agreement. But once the staff level agreement has been secured...
April last year or April this year?
April this year. So once we have secured the staff level agreement, they now put that before the IMF executive board. And the IMF executive board were always scheduled to meet in June. In fact, they had given a date, which is the 28th of June. And indeed, exactly the 28th of June, they did meet. And Ghana had met all of that criteria, which then meant that they have to release the third tranche of the $360 million. So that's exactly where we are.
So this $360 million that's coming to accounts tonight, Bank of Ghana, what is it going to be used for?
Yeah, it's basically for budgetary support. That is what it means. So at the time we were putting the 2024 budget together, we had made provision for financing from the IMF. So basically, there were about 3 sources of financing. You would look at your revenues coming in the form of taxation, and then you would look at the financing that was going to come from your multilaterals. And the IMF is one of those multilaterals once we came under the extended credit facility program with them. So there was always the expectation that in the course of the year, we should receive about 3 tranches. So first 600 million, second 360 million, and then a third, which is expected to come in the fourth quarter, another $360 million. So all of that coming together is expected to provide budgetary support.
So this budgetary support often is a line that's said, and we hear it. But for that one who's watching tonight, and I keep stressing on that because they are the ones who need to appreciate what's going on.
Sure.
Where does this money go by way of budgetary support? Is it roads? Is it hospitals? Is it compensation for public sector workers? Where is this money going?
Yeah, so basically you outline what your expenditure areas are, and then you give an indication of what the projected revenue is supposed to be and the sources that you are going to rely on. So as far as the accumulation of this revenue is concerned, then you go to Parliament for the appropriation. So what that means is that if you take a look at the entire 2024 budget, it spells out clearly what government expenditure is going to be for the entire year and how much government will need by way of funds or by way of revenue to be able to finance that expenditure.
If I remember correctly, the budget that was delivered that will cover this year was expected that government will spend in excess of 200 billion cedis this year. This $360 million, if you calculate to the CDT at today's exchange of 15.2, it's a little over 5 billion. How much of an impact can it make?
Well,
to the spend that the government has for the year?
No, it was never an indication that the 2024 budget was going to be measured in dollars in terms of revenue or in terms of funds.
I didn't mention dollars. I actually converted to cedis.
Exactly. So if it is cedis, then it is what it is. So there's absolutely no problem whatsoever.
What I mean is that quantum of money coming in.
Yes.
In the bigger scheme of how much government wants to spend.
Okay.
Is it a lot to make a difference?
You mean the 360 million?
Yes, please.
Yeah, but I just told you that this year alone, we've already secured $600 million from the IMF. And we have just secured $360 million.
So close to $1 billion has come in.
And quarter four, another $360 million will come in.
All right.
So if you put all of that together, that's something close to $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion. If you add the other one, it goes over $1 billion.
Exactly. So that's a lot of money. And in fact, over the 3-year extended credit facility, it is going to be $3 billion over the 3 years.
Yes.
So it means that by end of this year, how much are we talking about? We would have accessed something close to $2 billion already.
Yes.
Because the 360 million coming now, we have done 1.56 billion.
Yes.
So another 360 million.
We'll take us close to
$2
billion.
Close to $2 billion.
But even for what's already
coming. So that's
coming,
what it is.
But for what's already coming this year, so it's good you reference this, and it's good you're making this point.
That's okay.
600 million already in.
Yes.
Another 360 that's in now as of tonight.
Another 360 will come.
Sure. Before what's coming, the $600 million that we have received early this year, what was it used for?
Well, I mean, government, to support the budget simply means that all the expenditure items that you can find in the budget, is that okay, have had to be financed through whatever you will get from the multilaterals. Because yet, the Eurobond market has been shut on us. So the sources have mainly been from the multilaterals, from the T-bills, is that okay? And then from taxation. So if you put all of these together, it is that's the quantum of money that government is expected to spend. So as far as financing its expenditure for the entire year is concerned. So whether there are roads that have to be built, there are schools that have to be built, salaries that have to be paid, you name them. So all of that comes in that particular basket.
Is any part of this money going to Agenda 111?
Agenda 111 financing is a separate project. There are separate projects that are being financed under that. I think there's a World
Bank
the budget,
no?
Financing from that, right? So not necessarily from the budget, but there are funds that are supposed to be coming from the World Bank to be able to finance the Agenda 111 projects. And those are funds that were already worked on right after the COVID hit, and then we're getting out of the COVID situation. So you may not see it specifically feature in the 2024 budget. Yep.
I see. So Let me bring in Dr. Etiahi at this point. Before I ask some other granular details about where this takes us going forward and our indices for our city and its stability, and then the other gradients to do with recapitalizing the central bank and matters arising. Sure. Dr. Etiahi, tonight we're told that before midnight, we should see some 360 million United States dollars enter the Bank of Ghana accounts as the third tranche for the IMF bailout, the extended credit facility that we're accessing. For you, how do you view this funds coming in and what it means for the Ghanaian economy?
Thank you very much, and good evening to the ministry's director.
Dr. Ganiyu, yes.
Yeah. I mean, we've been through tough times. We went through tough times in 2022 and 2023. And this is just a bit of it to resolve some of the problems. The problems are too huge that what my friend is saying is not the solution. Seriously, it can't solve the problem that we have. And I think we may have to do with the little that we have secured. And don't forget, these are all debts. You know, you're coming from one debt and accumulating one debt on the other side. So, I mean, we should understand that why we shouldn't even, as I tell people this afternoon, I was telling people, we shouldn't make a lot of noise because we are basically exiting from the Euro bonds and then we are accumulating on the multinational with the soft terms. But whatever it is, it is there. That has to be paid either today or tomorrow or years ahead. So I don't think it's something we need to celebrate as other people have been celebrating, and begin to make sure that these things are put in very good use so that we wouldn't find ourselves in such situation as we are at the moment. The reason why I'm talking like this is that recovery, the fallout was such enormous. And before that, we even talk about PAMS card, program to mitigate the social cost of the adjustment. And even with that, the fallout was huge. But if you look at the current circumstances we are in, I've heard about LEAP and what they call it, whatever. The circumstances is that our current situation,
yes,
yeah, our current situation is a bit precarious because we have higher inflation, we have depreciation of the cedi, and you hear that the economy is on the right turn, and people are even quoting growth figures. And my co-partner there will tell you, he's an economist, he possibly tell you that anytime you're talking about growth, what you have to discern is to talk about the real growth and the nominal growth. And he would agree with me. When we talk about nominal growth, then it's just that what you have. But when we talk about taking the factor of inflation out of it, you may see that you are not growing as much as you think. So all that I would say is that let them put it in a very good use so that, I mean, it will help us years to come. But one thing I also find it incredible, if you look at the budget, he knows better than me. The biggest line item, which I saw, I think I've forgotten the figure, is wages and compensation, which was even bigger than interest payment, which have been deferred. And I believe that we have to be very careful that we don't borrow to pay compensation. We have done it before. If you remember, when President Kufuor secured the 750 from Eurobond, as he left some money there, and that money was used for single spine. And I've always said this, and I will say before anybody, if you borrow to consume, it becomes very difficult to pay. So that is why when he was talking about the budget and what have you, I would be very, very circumspect about wages and compensation. Because the wages and compensation for this year, I think it has stripped interest payment. And we have to be very careful that these monies that are coming is not going to go into the compensation and wages, so that we find it very difficult to pay in the years ahead. So, Francis, this is what my little comments about what has transpired.
All right, I'll go for a short break now. When I return, two other parts of this conversation. The matter of the funds for those whose monies are locked up with the financial houses, and also the moves to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana. We will discuss that after the break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching State of Affairs here on GHOne Television. Tonight we're discussing the Ghanaian economy. My guest is the technical advisor at the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Abdul Ganiyu. Also with us is Dr. Richard Nchani. He's a senior banking consultant, joining us via Zoom. The show is brought to you in association with MTN. MTN is everywhere you go. And the MTN Momo app is made just for you. It's to make your life a lot more easier. Download the MTN Momo app from the Google Play Store, the App Store. You cannot miss the blue and yellow icon. Download it now. What it gives you is the opportunity to be able to send and receive money, view statements, pay your bills. Everything you do with your Momo is available on that app, the MTN Momo app. Download it now, use it, and make your life a lot more easy with MTN. MTN is everywhere you go. So, Dr. Ganiyu, I come to you now on the matter on the central bank and the moves by government to recapitalize the bank. What is the plan to recapitalize the central bank?
Well, basically, we should accept the fact that the Bank of Ghana has been in some difficulty, largely on the back of the domestic, if you want, financial sector cleaning up.
That's a exchange program?
It had to, no, not the exchange program, but basically banks that were supposed to be collapsing that required the Bank of Ghana to make some monetary interventions. It was around 60.9 billion if you put all of that together. So that was such a significant amount of money.
But in the budget since 2018, there have been several allocations towards dealing with it.
Yes.
At the last time, it was 27 billion. So how did it jump to 60 billion?
Yeah, so if you put all of that together, it was for a period, you know, so all of that just didn't come in a year, and whatever was spent was going to deal with all the challenges as far as the banking sector is concerned. So if you accumulate all of that, we're talking about something in the region of 60 billion. But it also made losses of around 10 billion last year, 2023. So the idea is to sign an MOU with the Ministry of Finance. The MOU should be able to look at how much money, for example, is required for the recapitalization. We should also be looking at the timelines, for example, so as far as the whole process is concerned, and where this money is going to come from, the sources of funding. So those are the final details that are yet to be worked on, but very, very soon we should be able to come up with a MOU with the Bank of Ghana.
So do we know how much the government can give the central bank
from where I
by way of recapitalizing? And I asked this question also within the prism of the IMF program that we're under. Do we have the ability to
from where I said I'm not able to do that. The MOU is not in place yet. So once we are able to come up with the MOU, these details are going to be contained. And I'm sure we could have discussions later on that. But going forward, it's important that we are able to show up the credibility of the central bank. That is simply what we need.
There are some who argue that when the post-COVID and post the financial crisis that we're in, that required us going to the IMF. The central bank had to, and they had made confirmation of printing money for the government to help in financing our needs because we were shut out of the international capital market. Do we have reprieve now? Is the government today in a position to really find the money to recapitalize the central bank?
Yeah, so that's what I'm telling you, that not until the MOUs is done, it is kosher, then we can begin to look at those details. From where I sit, I'm not going to be able to say what it will capture, because at the end of the day, we need to understand the full picture, so as far as what amount of money is required to recapitalize. So we should be able to understand that going forward. Time frame is extremely important. But as you indicated, more importantly, where is the money going to come from? and those are the sources of funding. So we as the governor of the Bank of Ghana indicated. So let's wait until that MOU has been settled with the Ministry of Finance. And I believe there will be no problem at all in putting that out. But it's important that we are able to ensure the credibility of the Bank of Ghana. It's not a negotiating point at all. So whatever it is that we have to do to be able to achieve the objectives of the recapitalization, we have to do that. If we are unable to do that, that certainly is going to affect the entire banking sector. It's supposed to be a regulator, and if it doesn't have the strength, the capacity to be on its own, then it becomes extremely difficult for it to exercise any kind of oversight rule or oversight responsibility over the entire banking sector in Ghana.
Dr. Tiaine, what do you make of government's decision to get an MOU done, in essence, to recapitalize the central bank?
Thank you very much, Francis. I think I have written a lot of literature and articles about this. But you see, anytime you write about it, they'll come back and tell you that the bank is policy solvent. Immediately, we did the DDEP, which my friend, the doctor at your studio said. What actually broke the camel back was the DDEP. The DDEP, in the first time, we lost close to 60 billion. And if you look at the 60 billion, 37 billion was due to the DDEP because Bank of Ghana was actually financed government in such a way that, as you said, in the COVID time, in such a way that I think my friend over there knows what I'm telling. But you see, when we were talking about the DDEP and the effect on Bank of Ghana, all that you hear is policy solvent. And I have said, and I want to say it to the hearing of everybody, a regulator or a supervisor of a sector like banking, if you are a capital deficient, then it is not good for your reputation. When the honorable, my doctor friend speaking there, he said the money will hit at Bank of Ghana's account. It's not going to hit in Accra. It's hitting in Fed, our account with Fed, or account with Bank of England. And if you are supposed to be a central bank among central banks, and your solvency is doubted, then your credibility and international standing also go down. That is why I just agree with what your other presenter, doctor, is saying. All along, whenever you talk about this, they will tell you, oh, it's policy solvent. But you see, if you are regulating a sector and you are capital deficient, if you read all the IFRS, they will tell you, once you are deficient deficiency in your capital, it will be very difficult to even talk about regulation of other sector. So I think it's appropriate. But the question that your host said is very, very important. Where do this money come from? Because now we have fiscal consolidation. We have to put expenditure control. What are we going to do to recapitalize it? And the quantum of the recapitalization in consonance with the losses of 60 billion and 10 billion last year, it's going to take a hit on the government, and it's the government that would do it. So, as he said, the memoranda hasn't come, but those of us who have written about this central banking issue knows that Bank of Ghana need to be recapitalized and at least stop the language of policy solvent, because you're not dealing in isolated country. You're dealing with the euro, and you're dealing with the Bundestag. You're dealing with Bank of England. You're dealing with Fed reserves. No. And if you yourself is insolvent, how does your balance sheet look like? And how would they perceive you? From Ghana perspective, you can use the word policy solvent because your monetary policy, your almost the repurchase agreement, the rediscounting, and all those things, and the primary reserves are all helping you. But what about the perception from your correspondent institutions? So for me, it is very, very important. But the question, what matters most is that where and how are we going to recapitalize it? That is a big, 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 big question. Especially if we invoke the the Fiscal Responsibility Act and go into the 5% limit, then it is going to be very, very difficult for the central bank to be recapitalized maybe in a year or two. It will have to be staggered in such a way that it will not have impact on our fiscal consolidation.
All right, so much as it's important to recapitalize the central bank, how much of this action should we have people held responsible for the state that the central bank is in? Yes, I hear the part about the central bank being recapitalized, but who do we hold responsible for the troubles that led to the central bank being where it is today, Dr. GHOne?
I think that is the reason why in the IMF policy document, I think the latest one they wrote, they want central bank to be very independent. You know, if a central bank is not independent, so much independent, operational independence, regulatory independence, the other two independence, personnel independence. If you're not, you're going to have what we have today, because you finance government. By you financing government, it means that at least even the 5% in the Act, the Bank of Ghana Act, which says, or first it was 10, we say 5, you have actually exceeded it. Why did you have to exceed something? I'm sure they might have gone to Parliament to seek approval. Sure. But the question is that if we don't treat it with the independence that it requires, and I have seen the Bank of England, I mean, I know when it comes to certain things, they will tell you that, I mean, last week, what happened? The inflation came down, and everybody was expecting Governor Brady to drop the policy rate, which is the minimum lending rate. They said, no. I am not. The politicians wanted him to, Richard Sunak and the finance minister, Chancellor of Exchequer, he said, no, I'm not going to do it. Because if you have a strong, independent central bank with a strong governance, you're not going to have what we have had. Because it's just the financing of the government that has brought them onto their needs, period. I mean, you can't run away from it. They say COVID, they came in, fine. But why do you go in when you know the laws are there? And so let us be a lesson to us that when the laws are, that is why I'm very, very happy, very glad when the IMF said that we are going to look at the independence of the central bank. Very, very important. Until we get it independence, whether it's operational independence, whether it's a regulatory independence, and we don't have these webs coming in, we're going to have a problem. So I'm very grateful to them that they just want the central bank to be more independent so that we can look at the country. But the biggest question and the biggest problem is what he's saying. Apportion blames to who did it is that it is neither here nor there. I will believe that. Let us not go back too much. Let us be more proactive. Proactive is that the laws must be rigidly followed, strictly followed and complied with. Other than that, you're going to have this. You're going to have this all over and over again. If the law was 10%, then we change it to 5%. Now somebody has gone far more above that limit. Why? I know the agency is there. The agency for the COVID was there. But the question is that if you do that, you're putting your monetary policy in jeopardy. Because there is a say by the vice president.
All right.
If I wouldn't mind, I would have quoted his book, which I have. His book says that anytime you use monetary policy to finance physical policies, you have a serious deficiency in your monetary policy. It is Dr. Baumia, his book. I can quote the book for you. It's the Ghana, African reforms, economic reforms, Ghana's experience. And he wrote extensively. And I like about what he wrote. So I was very surprised that hasn't written a fantastic book, which I also use it in my PhD. And then I found it the opposite. And then I asked myself, do we write and not apply? So let it be a warning to whoever comes in.
All right.
That let the central bank be very
I know Dr. Ganiyu may have a reaction to what you just said, but I'll go for a break now. When I return, I'll take that reaction and then we'll wrap things up. Stay with us. All right, we're now on the home stretch for the last part of our conversation here on State of Affairs. I'm Francis Abban. Tonight we're discussing the IMF bailout, the third tranche just in, and also the matters to do with the recapitalization of the central bank. Dr. Ganiyu, before the break, you had an intervention to make?
Yes, I think the point we have to accept is that the difficulties that came with COVID obviously created a situation where we had no other choice than to resort to the Bank of Ghana in many cases.
And break the law?
Well, we didn't break the law because in
you went above 5%.
No, in 2020, but the Fiscal Responsibility Act was suspended. If you recall.
And was it suspended in perpetuity?
No, wait. We went to Parliament in 2020.
Yes.
If you recall, I think that was around the media budget review.
Yes.
And we asked for a suspension of those fiscal responsibility rules.
For how long?
It was for the budget year 2020.
Good.
And beyond 2020, we still have needed some form of financing.
So did you go back to Parliament to have it extended? To have the suspension extended?
I need to take a look at that. But from where we sit,
but the last set, that wasn't the case.
Fine. Everything we have done for the year 2024 has been within those particular parameters or those particular rules. If you look at 2023, for example, our budget deficit was around 3.9%.
But the damage was caused in 2022.
No.
Exactly. 3.9%. But the previous year, it was around 11%. All right? So that was it. And it was largely on the back of spendings that we had to embark on by virtue of the COVID pandemic. Out of COVID came with its own global economic crisis of which Ghana wasn't isolated. So the point I'm making is that we were caught in critical situations absolutely out of the norm. Nobody predicted the coming of COVID and the kind of impact that it was going to have on the economy. If you had an economy that for the first time, people basically were not going to work, some people, and yet these were people on government payroll who had to be paid. And Dr. Tuahine and yourself, all of us have agreed that if you look at government expenditure, for example, a chunk of it go into the payments of salaries, emoluments, and whatnot. So in that critical COVID year, government had to take the decision. I'm not going to lay anybody off. I'm not going to stop paying salaries. We have to continue to pay that. Yet there was the challenge of having to spend your way out of COVID by way of the PPEs and all the health interventions that we had to bring in. So that was an emergency situation. And if you have a central bank, excuse me to say, in emergency times like that, central banks do intervene. But central bank did not just intervene by way of breaking the law. As I indicated, the Ministry of Finance went to Parliament in 2020 to ask for Parliament to suspend the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
We still not have clarity on 2021 and 2022. But fair, we will not belabor the point on that score. Do we have an answer to where the money will come from to recapitalize the central bank?
I said I do not have the answer yet.
Will we get it?
But
will we ever get
it? Once we continue to improve as an economy, revenues are picking up, we are going to ensure that debt sustainability is brought within the parameters.
Will that be between now and the end of this year?
That have been set by the IMF. The target is that by 2028, we should achieve a debt sustainability of 55%. Is that okay? Which is debt to GDP ratio. Yes. So that tells you that once the economy continues to improve, obviously, you're going to find the money to do a lot of important things.
Okay.
And that would include recapitalizing your central bank, because that is extremely important. When we're caught in a difficult situation in dire straits, the Bank of Ghana did come to the rescue of this country. So now that things are beginning to look better, obviously, we have to be able to find the money to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana, whichever way it is.
No problem.
Yeah.
Dr. Etiani, final words before we wrap it all up tonight. In a minute, please.
Well, I think I want to thank you, and I want to tell Ghanaians that this is not a time for celebration. Because all these things we are doing, I think the question I want to ask my honorable friend there, doctor sitting down there.
Dr. Ganiyu.
You only have, Dr. Ganiyu, you have only rescheduled your debt to 2026 and some to 2028 or 2029. What would you be doing that on that maturity time, you have enough to pay? Yesterday, I saw the thing, to pay that amount of money. Because you see, if we don't take care and we don't plan seriously for this, I've said it here, and it is not my way, it is not my thinking. If we don't manage it very well, you Dr. Ganiyu knows that. You know 2 countries in this world who haven't been able to manage their debt efficiently and have become perpetual going to IMF for rescheduling. I'm talking about the debt trajectory of Argentina and Greek. These are countries that every 4 years, they have to go for debt. So my only concern to Dr. Ganiyu, that the country must wake up, and not be the Goggisberg economy. If we continue to do the Goggisberg economy, I don't see how we'll be able to repay the bilateral even in 2026, let alone the euro money. So that is my fear and my worry. If they can assure us that we are making all the necessary, not just talking, tell us the strategy that will be put in place to be able that on this maturity period, we're not going to ask for deferrals, so that our grandchildren, our great-great-grandchildren will not come and inherit the Argentina type of economy or the Greek type of economy. That is what I
Can you assure us that?
Yes, I can assure you that. And you just need to look at the growth figures for the first quarter of 2024. We are growing at 4.7%. The last time we recorded a similar growth was somewhere in 2022. Is that okay? So that's an indication that once you continue to grow your economy, you will certainly have the ability to pay off your debts.
Dr. Ganiyu, thank you. Unfortunately, I am out of time, but thank you for your time. Technical advisor at the Finance Ministry, and also Dr. Richmond Etiani, Senior Banking Consultant. That'll be it for us tonight here on State of Affairs. Thanks to you for watching. Have a good night.